You can see that normally in the team when you go. Okay, okay, perfect. So good morning, everyone. Today we have a short session on a hot topic on online participant pools. Um, I don't know what you guys expect in detail from this session, but what did I plan to do? And of course, you can ask me questions along the way or wait until the end. You can choose. Do not hesitate to interrupt me. We're only with a small group, so please just go ahead if you have a question. You can enter if it's for the session. So first, very briefly, what are online participant pools, a bit the pros and the cons of online participant pools versus a lab. So it's mainly for survey research and experimental research, but if you have other questions or other ideas, please go ahead. Then a bit on data quality. What can you do about it when you are designing your survey or experiment? And what can you do afterwards when you collected the data? What can you do if you have low data quality? What does it cost? And some practical tips and tricks. And of course, there is way time for questions. I'm not going to talk that long about this. So online participant pools, what is it? Well, you have for a survey or a lab experiment, you need participants. And instead of bringing them to the lab or going with your survey to a particular group of people to collect data, you run it online and you rely on online workers, or it's also called crowdsourcing. So these participant pools can act as participants for experimental or survey research, and you pay them in return for participation in your research. Some examples are mTurk and Prolific. There are other online participant pools, but I focus on these two because I know them best from my field of research. But I know there are other participant pools, and I think most of the tips and tricks are valid for all online pools. Oh, a bit the pros and the cons of online participant pools. It's a bit on the experience that we have in our research, but also what you read about it in the literature. So I have some experience with Prolific, not that much, but I've read a lot about it because I'm an experimental researcher, and mainly I run my experiments mainly in the lab. But of course, sometimes you have to switch to an online participant pools, and a bit the pros and the cons. To me, it was surprising how fast you collect data on the web. You put it online in a few hours, you have way much more data than you collect in 1 week in the lab. So it goes extremely fast, really a couple of hours and you have your data. So if you are in a time limit, online participant pools are the way to go, I think. You can collect many observations, so you can have a large sample size, which is not always the case when you do a lab experiment. You have a student group or so where you rely upon. You have maybe 200 students in your class, then your maximum number of observations will be 200. While on the web, you have there is a larger population that you can rely upon. For instance, on mTurk, there are over 500,000 workers from 190 countries, and that's only mTurk. So you can collect many observations, and typically they work for a low cost. However, I will come back to that. I don't think it's always cheaper online than in the lab because you need more observations, but I'll come back to that later on. A bit the cons of the online participant pools. To me, the most tricky thing is you do not have any control anymore. In a lab, they are sitting in your lab, you know what they're doing, you can follow it up on your screen. You have control. As an experimental researcher, I like to have control on my experiments, which you don't have on the internet. When you run an online experiment, it's really fingers crossed that they are really reading your instructions. They are really doing what you ask them to do and not just randomly clicking. It's way less control, I believe. Low data quality. They are really fast in filling out your survey or experiments. I don't know whether they always read everything in detail, And you see that in the data. They do strange things. You have outliers. You have yeah, very strange answers to questions that it doesn't make sense. The data quality is way lower than in the lab. That's something we saw. And therefore, you need many more observations. If you want to find your effects, you need more observations. You need more, higher statistical power. So low statistical power due to the noise that they induce in your data set. So those are a bit of the cons. And therefore, although one worker is cheaper than maybe one student, you need many more observations. So in total, I believe the cost will be rather the same. So data quality. What can you do when you design your survey or experiment? Well, one of the advices that you read in the literature, I do not have any experience with this, but after reading it now, I think when I would run a study on mTurk, I would use cloud research. So not immediately go to mTurk, but run it through cloud research. So cloud research is somehow connected to mTurk. So they rely upon the population that you can find on mTurk, but they already select the high quality participants. So they exclude low quality participants. So that's one thing you can already do. You can also select yourself participants, so that you believe have a high quality. And what is high quality then? Well, if you run a study on mTurk and Prolific, it's the same. You have to approve their payment. So if you see that they missed some attention checks or so, but you really need to be sure that they did not answer it in the right way, then you can disapprove their participation and they don't get paid. And an approval rating of more than 95%. That so you see that for all participants on mTurk and Prolific, what is their approval rate, and you can select only those that they only get the invitation for your survey or experiment. So only allow participants with an approval rating of 95% really increases your data quality. Include some screening questions to select qualified participants. So if you need participants with specific qualifications, you can include some screening questions. One way that you can do that is asking them, for instance, how many months of experience do you have, or how many years of experience do you have with particular things. But be aware, participants know that you are selecting them, so they will overstate their qualifications. So maybe it's better to use knowledge questions that you can then select on whether they really have the knowledge of a topic that you need in your survey or experiment. Include CAPTCHAs to exclude bots. So the CAPTCHAs, we all know them, select the traffic lights and stuff like that, and then they already are paying attention, and you know they are not just regular bots answering everything. Include comprehension checks. Another word for that you find in literature is natural language attention checks, and also specify with those questions. So a comprehension check is just whether they understood the instructions. So ask a question that is related to your instructions, and if they answer that incorrectly, then you can already exclude them because they did not read your instructions or they did not get the point of the study. So include several comprehension checks, and then you can specify to the workers that if they answer, for instance, 90% of these questions correctly, only then they get paid. That's also a way to motivate them to really read the instructions and behave the way you expect them to behave. It's not the same as an attention check. You can also include attention checks, and that's more like now indicate neutral, or now indicate I agree, or something like that, or other things you can think of just to make sure that they are paying attention. But they, the participants that are really paying attention to your study, they might feel kind of distrust of you, like they don't trust me to answer this in the right way. They expect me to misbehave. And it kind of interrupts the study if you're like in a questionnaire and then suddenly, oh, now indicate this, it interrupts your study. So not a big fan of an attention check, more of the comprehension check, because they are related to the study and participants do not feel this kind of distrust. So it does not really interrupt the study. It depends. You can select that upfront, but not on all participant pools. In some, you really have to include it yourself, or like on MTurk, you have to pay for it. If you you see, so the cost increases. It's very cheap, and you start from the whole population. But then, if you want a select group of it, yeah, then the fee raises. So yeah. Yeah, so these comprehension checks, definitely include them in your study. They are related to the study, so it really helps the participants. Yes. I would include multiple. Yeah, and multiple, yeah, throughout the survey, because some of your participants will pay attention in the beginning, but then to the end. So I would include multiple, but especially after the instructions, because then you are sure that the answer behind, they really understood what you asked them to do. Then after data collection, so you collected the data and then you see, data quality not that good. What can you do about it? Well, first of all, you can always collect additional data. So let's be clear, that's always an option. But if that's not an option because of budget restrictions or whatever, or time limits, so you have the data and now you have to deal with this data. Be transparent about everything you do. If someone receives your data set, they should be able to redo your analysis and have exactly the same results. So be transparent about everything you do. If you exclude observations, no worries, that is a possibility, but be very, very transparent about it. I hate it when I see like these things. Oh yeah, we did some changes to the data set. What changes? What did you exactly do? Why did you exclude these observations? Did they differ? Did they not differ from the other ones? Just be transparent and report everything. So yeah, of course, it's about sample reduction. If you have low data quality, typically we will go for sample reduction. On what basis can you do that for an online participant pool? As I already told you, the response times are way shorter than in the lab. So take an average or so and then have a look at box plots or so. If you see some that are really, really fast, like it's impossible to do it in that time, well, that might be an argument to delete these observations. So really outliers on the response time. Nonsense answers, of course, when you ask a qualitative question and they answer with a numerical answer, yeah, that's kind of strange. Probably they didn't read the question, and also a reason to exclude them. If you see multiple responses from one IP address, so it is possible that workers redo the survey because they get paid for it. So if they thought, oh, okay, this was a researcher that paid me a lot, I'm just going to redo the survey or the experiment. So look at the IP addresses and you can exclude the ones that filled it out multiple times. If you see attention or comprehension check failures, that's also a reason to exclude them. And then the typical ones, but that's also for studies in the lab. If you have a manipulation check failure, also a reason to exclude them, and outlier responses. So if you see some responses that are just way out of range, also a reason to exclude. But that's the same for all participant pools, whether they are online or in the lab. I thought of something that I wanted to say about this, but it's gone. Yeah, it will come back. just move on. Then, of course, what does it cost? I have mTurk and I have Prolific. I know there are other options as well, but just to give you an idea, on mTurk, you decide how much you pay your participants. So the mean effective hourly wage on mTurk is below $5. So way cheaper than in the lab. A service fee of 20% you have to pay to mTurk, so that does not go to the participants, that goes to mTurk. If you use embedded screening tools, so that's what I told Jeroen a minute ago, then you pay additional fees. So if you want to have a select group of participants, you pay additional fees. For example, if you have 400 participants, let's say you pay them $10 per participant, well, the cost on mTurk would be $4,800 when you use cloud research. Then it's more expensive, but you have high quality data. So that's up to you to decide what you want to do. These calculation techniques are just online available. You can Google on Prolific, the one that's following next. You have it on the Prolific website. On mTurk, you find some calculators that people design. So it's not on mTurk itself, but I think it's reliable. I would say 20-25%. In the lab, I'm speaking for experimental research. If you have 20 participants in each experimental condition, it's low, but it's doable. You can really find results with only 20 participants in your experimental cell. I would always say go for 25 or 30, but 20 is doable. While on mTurk, not sure. Yeah, it's for each participant, it is cheap and it goes fast. So there are really so pros, but there are also contras. Yeah, I would say if I run a typical lab study on mTurk or Prolific, I would go for 50 participants in each cell. So I would count on 50% that I can lose actually, but I think it's more like 25%. And actually, I would advise collect many observations and try not to lose participants. Try to include them all because you always have to explain why did you exclude them? Do they differ? What are the results when you include them? And yeah, of course you excluded them for a reason, probably because your results were not what you expected them to be. So I would say collect many observations. If you have more participants, higher statistical power. So you find the results also when these low quality observations are included. But yeah, when you weigh the cost, yeah, hard to say. Prolific, you have a minimum wage. So therefore, sometimes it has been said that Prolific has yeah, higher quality observations than mTurk, probably because you have these more kind of restrictions like minimum wage of $8 per hour. Uh, you have to pay a service fee of 25 or 30%, and there is a cost calculator on the Prolific website. So I did the same thing. I want 400 participants for $10 per participant, so it will cost me $5,000, which is more in line with cloud research. So yeah, I think whatever you choose as online participant pool, it's all a bit of the same. Although if you go to mTurk, immediately that one is way cheaper, but you have to deal with the low quality data. Then some practical. Oh, Kenny, yeah. No, no, no. You have to tell them upfront how much you are going to pay them, and so you need to know how long your survey or experiment takes. Yes, and I have a tip on that in a minute. No, not the case, not the case. Yes, Marie. Yeah, it's the same on Prolific. You have like a balance that you put on there, but you can really exclude them from the payment. Yeah, yeah, but it's always hard to do that. Yeah, because mhm, no, you can exclude them, but you really need to have a case uh, to. Yeah, always you have to do that. But even then, it's really hard because if they really spend time on it, they expect you to pay. Well, with they, I mean Prolific Amtor expect you to pay the participant. Yeah, so it would be a combination that you need, like a very short response time and more like that you really have a case like no, this participant does not deserve the payment. So yeah, you pay for the low quality data as well. Some tips and tricks. Yeah, so I already told you, like if they have more than 500 approved, no, approval rate of 90, more than 95%, or like approved hits. A hit is an experimental task that they finished. They have more than 500 approved hits. That would also be a high quality data. Ideally, you combine this restriction with comprehension checks to further improve your data quality. Then, to answer Kenny's question, to define your completion times, like uh, how long does my survey or experiment takes? What we did, so I kind of speak out of experience. We tested it with, like we typically do with colleagues in the lab. Yeah, not that reliable if you go to an online participant pool. So we thought our experiment would take like 40 minutes, 45 minutes. On Prolific, it seemed that it would only take 20, 25 minutes. So we really overpaid them, our participants. So learn from your mistakes, move on, and do some pilot testing online with the online participant pool. And you can do that. So you can on Prolific or MTurk specify that you only need like, let's say 20 participants, and that's your pilot test to see how long does it take. And then um, yeah, of course, you have to pay them as well. So probably you will overpay those participants, but then it's only 20 that you overpaid and not, yeah, the, I don't know exactly anymore how many we collected, but 200 or so. uh, so then you only overpay 20 instead of 200 participants. Um, and these participants from the pilot test, you can include them in your final sample on the condition that you did not change anything. So if you made a change after the pilot, of course, you have to exclude them from your final data set and it's just your pilot test. So you have then a pilot sample and an actual sample. Yes. Hmm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. If you change the payment, the motivation of the workers might be different. So you changed something. Yes, you can. On Prolific, I know you can. On Amturk, I'm not sure how it exactly works. Probably through cloud research that you can also see that, but I'm not sure. I don't have any experience on Amturk, but on Prolific you definitely can upfront. So if you want to run a study, you can already see how many participants are in that category and then you can decide whether it's yeah, then you're done. uh, but on Amturk, the participant pool is way larger than on Prolific, but you have everything. Yeah, so pilot testing, very important. Of course, you also do a pilot of your lab experiment, but for the online pool, it's very important for the completion time because if they see the wage that they get, yeah, they are immediately going to click on your study, but you're not sure whether they are actually paying attention to it or just going for the payment. Yeah, so if you want to target participants based on demographics, use Prolific because there you can really do that. On mTurk you can't, but maybe on Cloud Research you can. So that I don't know. Then something I didn't realize myself, but it's has been described in the literature. Be aware that workers use forums, so fora, online fora, to discuss experimental tasks, and thus they may see through your manipulations, which is kind of a problem for your study. Yes, and they just really tell each other where to click, like your comprehension checks that you included, stuff like that. They discuss it. Yeah, to be faster and faster and faster and get the payment. So keep track of these forums. There are some papers that describe the forums that typically are being used. So. Yeah. I'm not sure whether students are available. That's something I don't know. Probably it is. I know you can select whether they are working full-time, part-time students. That I don't know. Yeah, yeah. That you can. Probably student is included. Not sure. Age, yeah, definitely. Yeah, but then you have many participants from the US. US students typically are older than, so age is still not mm. Yeah, collect many observations that I also told you already. So many more than you would do in the lab. If you want to run an interactive experiment, so let's say you have a superior and a subordinate, or a buyer and a supplier, and they need to interact in a lab, we can easily we can easily do that. But on the internet, it's harder, and especially when you need specific software, you need to make sure that it is supported by the forum which you are using. Like on we typically use a software called Set3, and that's not supported by Prolific. So yeah, if you're used to program your experiments in that software and you cannot use it on Prolific, yeah, then you have a problem. But it is possible to run interactive experiments that they really interact. So you need two participants at the exact same time. But as I already told you, you collect your data in a few hours. So of course there are participants at the exact same time available. So that's not something to worry about, but the software is something to worry about. Then if you need participants from multiple countries, let's say the UK and the US, keep in mind that there is a time difference between those countries and you collect data in only a couple of hours. So if you need participants from multiple countries and there is a timing difference, keep that in mind when putting the survey online. Because otherwise you might have a sample mainly from the UK while you also needed US people, or the other way around. So yeah, just keep that in mind when you put it online. We are it's a bit early, but then of course you can ask me a lot of questions. So to end with, prior research has shown that online participant samples are comparable to other samples like students. So you just with all the things that you have to keep in mind, of course, but they are comparable to other samples in behavior. Using online workers as research participants is a valid methodological choice in many conditions. So it's not that you have to argue why it's valid. It is valid. Research has shown that. So you can rely upon these participants pools. But should we all move to online participants? I don't think so. Should we all stick to the lab? I also don't think so. So it's a bit weighing which sample that you are using for which study. Why do you need students? Why do you need them to be in the lab? why would it be interesting to run it online? Just weigh all these things and then make the right decision to do it online or in the lab. I would say that's all I had to say about this topic. Maybe you have some questions for me. Yeah, can you? Power analysis, yeah. It depends on the fields that you are in. Um, I know, I think in marketing it is common to do it, but probably you see, so it's already different. Um, the hardest thing on power calculation is that you need already some coefficients, so you have to rely upon prior research or a prior study that you have been running, but typically those are not available. Well, if for our field, I'm not saying something about marketing or other kind of fields, but in accounting, impossible. It's good advice to do power analysis, but typically those the estimates that you need in your calculation are just not available, so you cannot calculate it. But otherwise, that would of course be my advice to do power analysis, but I know those things are not available. Prolific. If you need, let's say, really well, I would not say practitioners because then we immediately think on management accountants or so, but just people that are in the work field, then I would say maybe an online participant pool is the way to go because you cannot bring them into the lab. It's almost impossible to do that, or you need this kind of pool on your own where they can subscribe. But I don't have that available. So when I can do the study with students, I would do it in the lab. Um, if I would do an interactive experiment, I would also do it in the lab. Um, so if you need people that are in the work field, I would go for an online experiment. Um, and then you select on a job title. Um, then the timing of the experiment, like typically in your PhD, you can encounter such situations. The students, we only have them for 2 times 12 weeks. That's it. And then, yeah, I am programming my experiment and oh, damn. They're on holidays, they're not here. And you're like on this deadline, then you can also move to the online participant. Situations like COVID, we all had to move to an online participant pool. So I really think that it can be used and we should use it. But of course, you should have the budget for it as well, because if you had to collect many data points, that's something to take into account. Yeah, thank you. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Hmm. I don't know whether they can check. Yeah, you can check whether they still feel like they're male, female. Yeah, yeah. Hmm. Hmm. But that's something I'm also wondering about, and I'm just putting it here honestly. It's, don't know whether it is the case, but I was thinking like if you need, let's say, internal auditors, and maybe they are on prolific. I don't know. I didn't check it. But we all have the qualifications to be an auditor, right? We all have studied business economics or something else. We can be. Are you on this online participant pool? Are we the workers that are on there? So are those really internal auditors? Do they really have the time and uh, motivation to be there? Yeah, if you just work with Qualtrics or so, I think they can. But there is software that you can block their screen, right? I think you can. We didn't do that, um, but I think you can program that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We ran the study before ChatGPT. Yeah. Then you have to need to have a combination of multiple things that didn't go as you expected. I think if you really need them, you need to go to them and don't bring them to the lab. And yeah, put your lab over there. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the only way to go if you really need a specific type of. I'm not sure whether you really find the high educated people. It can. I'm just saying. I don't believe that, but it's my own opinion. Yeah. Yeah. I think prolific blocks. It's like if uh, they calculate an average, and if well, not based on 10 participants, but if multiple participants and they see the completion time is increasing, they block. It stops. Participants can no longer participate until you increase the. But that's prolific. MTurk is different because you can pay them whatever you want. I think it's a typical motivation question, right? Does motivate? Yeah, yeah. Definitely not sure whether it increases your data quality. Yeah, I think the other way around. Yeah, just click on it. But I don't think there's research on it. Yeah, feel free to do it. I think everyone has budget limitations, right? So overpayments, yeah, kind of sucks. But it happens. Other questions from experiences that you had with these tools that you want to share? Does anyone have experience? Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That. I would definitely do it. That's possible. Hmm. Yeah, it really depends on the situation. Yeah, one. Yeah, that's why they say that Prolific is higher data quality than mTurk. They have way more behind the scenes than mTurk. On mTurk, you can really click and click and click and click. Yeah, but it's cheaper. And I see many researchers using mTurk, many more actually than Prolific. Yeah. But in our field. So in accounting, I see more studies on mTurk than on Prolific. Other questions? And I think we can just end early. And if you have any questions or thoughts on it, you can always contact me, of course. I included also some references which I based the slides on. So I think the slides are available online. And you can, of course, always contact me. Good luck with your studies.